Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Saturday, October 11th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Great to be with you this weekend. We have a special episode today as we at KVPR continue to cover the partial shutdown of the federal government. Today marks 11 days since Congress came to a stalemate over how to fund the government, and we've been checking in with our elected officials during this dynamic time to hear how they're working to get it back open. Last week, we brought you a conversation with Democratic Congressman Jim Costa, who represents California's 21st Congressional District. You can find that conversation on our October 3rd episode. Today, we are hearing from another member of the House, Republican Congressman Tom McClintock. McClintock has been in Congress for 16 years and represents parts of Fresno, Madera, and Mariposa counties, among others. Thanks for joining me, Congressman McClintock.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So to start, I wanted to note it's now been over a week since the government shut down. So from your point of view, what is it going to take to move past the shutdown?
Well, adoption of the continuing resolution to fund the government at the same level that the Democrats agreed to in March. That continuing resolution makes no other changes. There are no Republican priorities in the bill. It simply extends authorized spending until November 21st to buy us 8 weeks. Now it's 6 weeks to finish the appropriations process. So it's not all that complicated. The House passed that bill September 19th, and the Senate needs to act. Instead, the Democrats are demanding $1.5 trillion in increased spending over the next 10 years. Think of that as an average of about $12,000 taken from the earnings of every household in America over the next decade. And at a time when we're finally, making progress reducing the deficit, this would reverse that progress.
I noticed your colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene, said she was against a continuing resolution and she wanted to get this sorted. I'm just curious, in the House, is how you feel the predominant opinion, or is it hard getting everyone on the same page?
Well, it is the Congress. So, yes, you have 435 prima donnas all going in a separate direction, but that's the whole point of the process. But, in this case, the continuing resolution doesn't do anything more than simply continue existing spending. I don't like the levels that it's spending at, but I supported it to buy us the 8 weeks we need to continue those discussions.
So what's your response to the criticism that it's the Republicans who are less willing to negotiate and more to blame in this situation when it comes to the shutdown?
Well, again, the House Republicans already acted and sent a clean continuing resolution over to the Senate. And again, it simply continues spending at levels the Democrats previously agreed to. What they want is to extend the Obamacare premiums that were boosted during the COVID crisis. So again, we don't have anything that we can negotiate. There are no Republican priorities in the bill. The whole purpose of the continuing resolution was to buy time to have those negotiations.
So do you not agree with extending those premiums?
No, I mean, the premiums will simply revert to the original Obamacare premium levels. As you know, the premium subsidies were radically increased during COVID to extend to families that are earning six figures. That was done as a temporary measure because lockdowns were throwing people out of work. The Democrats want to make these temporary subsidies permanent. If the subsidies expire, as they are scheduled to do in December, a single individual earning $40,000 a year will still only pay about 7% of their income for their health care. That's about $2,700. Taxpayers will pick up the other $5,400 a year. Take a look at a single individual who's at the poverty line, $15,000. They'd end up paying $3.45 a week, with the taxpayers paying 98% of the cost of the policy. I don't think that's terribly unreasonable. But the Democrats want to go much further than that. They want to gut the Medicaid reforms that require able-bodied adults to look for work. They want to prevent states like California from padding Medicaid receipts to use to pay for health care for illegals. They want to require repealing the verification of legal status for aliens. It's now in the law. They'd repeal $50 billion in rural health care assistance that we passed earlier this year. And they would take health savings accounts away from 10 million Americans. That's actually in the Democrats' alternative bill. So I'm happy to have that debate, but don't you think we should reopen the government first?
Forgive me, earlier I said extending the premiums. I meant extending the tax credits. Thank you for understanding what I meant. Democrats have also been advocating to reverse changes made to Medicaid, known as Medi-Cal, here in California. The cuts happened under the recently passed Big Beautiful Bill Act. What do you say to folks who are concerned about how those Medicaid cuts will impact maybe the many rural hospitals that we have here in the San Joaquin Valley who serve a large amount of Medicaid patients?
Well, again, we put $50 billion into the Big Beautiful Bill to assist rural health care. That's what the Democrats want to rescind. On top of that, we have to ask the question, okay, well, who would actually lose their Medicaid coverage under the Big Beautiful Bill? Well, there are three groups that will lose coverage. Illegal aliens, fraudsters, usually through double dipping, and able-bodied adults with no dependents who simply refuse to get up off the couch and work part-time, or at least look for part-time work, or at least train to look for part-time work. Those are the three groups that will be losing their Medicaid benefits. And once again, I don't think that's unreasonable to ask able-bodied adults to put in half the effort that tax-paying families are putting in to pay the bills to support them in these programs.
I have a couple follow-up questions to that. You mentioned that Rural Health Transformation Program, I believe, is that $50 million. But I read... $1 billion, rather. Yes, thank you. I did read, according to the nonprofit KFF Health News, that program will really only cover about 37% of the estimated loss of federal Medicaid funding in rural areas. Is there a world where you would advocate for even more funding if this becomes a problem for rural hospitals?
Again, rural hospitals will be losing illegal aliens that are on these plans. They'll be losing fraudsters. And they'll be losing able-bodied adults who refuse to look for work. That means that they will need to provide fewer services to these groups, and their costs will go down. We have $50 billion to help them through that transition.
I spoke with your colleague, Congressman Jim Costa, recently, and he called the fact that people in the country without legal status receiving health care, he called it a canard, basically said that it's a lie being told by the conservatives. How do you respond to that comment? Because this is a highly disputed fact on both sides.
Oh, it's hardly a canard. I think there are about 1.4 million illegals right now receiving Medicaid benefits, and they do so through two ways. Either by simply not verifying their status. The Big Beautiful Bill requires verification of legal residency before you can access these programs. The Democrats would repeal that requirement that they be verified, that they're here in the country legally. And the other provision is a game that states like California play, where they raise taxes on hospitals, use those receipts to claim additional Medicaid benefits. With the additional Medicaid benefits, they reimburse the hospitals and then use the excess to fund I think it's now $12 billion a year that California is spending to provide health care to illegals. So it's a backdoor way of funding it by charging Medicaid. And we put a stop to that in the Big Beautiful Bill.
And I just want to process that myself to understand, because I asked Congressman Costa that. I said, now, I know in California that people without legal status can get Medi-Cal. That's sort of changing, where they're going to have to pay $100. And he said to me that they do not use federal funding for that program. But you're saying...
He's flat out wrong on that. The way they use federal funding is through this shell game, where, as I said, they will tax hospitals, use that money to get federal matching funds for Medicaid. With the federal matching funds, they not only pay back the hospitals, but then they use the excess to fund the very program that we're talking about, the $12 billion a year that is going to provide for free medical assistance for illegal aliens here in the country, or here in California.
So that makes me think, because I know you're very fiscally conservative, and I think a lot of this debate is centering around what's it going to cost the government. That's been a hallmark of President Trump's second presidency. But what about the folks who live in the Valley who are going to potentially see their premiums double? What do we say to them who are sitting here maybe feeling a little bit like their health care is a bit of a bargaining chip in this political war?
Well, their premiums will simply revert to the pre-COVID Obamacare subsidies. As I said, an individual with the poverty line will still have taxpayers pick up 98% of the cost of their Obamacare plan. So that does not seem unreasonable to me. But more to the point, you have to ask the question, well, what will this cost every household in California if the Democrats are able to add $1.5 trillion of additional spending over the next 10 years? And that cost is about $12,000 for an average household. You take the number of households in America, divide that into $1 trillion, that's about $8,000 per household. The Democrats are planning $1.5 trillion of additional spending. That's $12,000 per household. You said either directly through your taxes or indirectly through tax-driven price increases as businesses pass their costs on to consumers.
I want to pivot a little bit, Congressman, because this week, California voters actually started receiving their ballots for Proposition 50. This will temporarily redraw congressional districts here in California if it's passed. And those districts would then favor more Democratic Party candidates. The redrawing of the maps will hurt some of your Republican colleagues, and I'm just curious, what's your view on this redistricting issue?
Well, Californians have been protected from radical partisan gerrymandering through the Independent Commission. That's what Newsom's trying to bypass. The California Commission held 196 public meetings. They received more than 33,000 written communications over 9 months. They listened to every constituency and community in the state, and they drafted a consensus plan in public. This Gavin matter was drafted behind closed doors by partisan zealots in a matter of days. And if they succeed, I think we can expect this to happen after every election where the Democrats don't like the way a particular district voted.
Now, this Prop 50 movement was born out of congressional map redrawing that happened in Republican-led Texas after President Trump asked them to redraw their maps. Other Republican states are also considering redrawing their maps. I mean, does it concern you that this could just be an ongoing back and forth for years to come?
Well, first of all, I think we need to remember how this started. After the 2020 reapportionment, Texas Democrats sued Galveston County in order to get another racially profiled district favoring the Democrats. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said you can't gerrymander based on race anymore. The Texas legislature looked at that and gleefully redrew their lines to be in conformity with this new Fifth Circuit court decision. Did they take advantage of the process? They certainly did. The difference is that Texas law allows that kind of partisan gerrymandering. California's been protected from it by their constitution. And that's what Gavin Newsom is tearing down.
I believe this is a temporary situation, though, with Prop 50, right? It's just for this election?
I think if it passes, we can expect every time the Democrats don't like the way a district voted to have another measure to change the district lines to get a desired outcome, ignoring the will of the voters.
Well, to end, Congressman, I kind of want to zoom out a little bit. If you had to guess, how long this shutdown might last, what's your sense right now about where we're going to go moving forward?
That's hard to say, but I've been on the other side of shutdowns in the past, and they were a huge mistake. The public will always turn against whichever party is making demands by shutting down the government. In this case, it's just the Democrats. Again, all that's before them right now is to continue existing levels of spending for the next, now 6 weeks, ending November 21st. I think the longer this goes on, the more pressure is going to come on them. So if I were to make a prediction, I don't think it'll go on too much longer.
Congressman Tom McClintock, representing California's 5th Congressional District. Thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we did look into the claim by Republicans that a large number of people without legal status receive Medicaid coverage, and we found that several sources do dispute that claim. For example, Leighton Koo is the director of George Washington University's Center for Health Policy Research. He spoke with NPR about this and said those claims distort the facts. Koo says there are only a few exceptions where federal money would go towards providing medical care to undocumented individuals, and that includes emergency room care. And that is today's show. Thank you for listening to this special weekend episode. We will be back to our normal schedule on Monday. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. You can find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Sources and methods, the crown jewels of the intelligence community. Shorthand for how do we know what's real? Who told us? If you have those answers, you're on the inside, and NPR wants to bring you there. From the Pentagon to the State Department to spy agencies, listen to understand what's really happening and what it means for you. Sources and Methods, the new national security podcast from NPR.